Okay guys, so in a previous video, I managed to install AC into the little Civic here, and I did so by using a combination of both new and used parts just to try to get everything to fit right and to save myself some money. And as you can imagine, it didn't turn out so well. Now, from what I understand, I believe I installed all the parts correctly because the tech managed to do a leak down test, and values say I got a low of 35 and a high of 125. And I don't know what this means exactly, but he said it held vacuum, so that was good enough for me. And you know, at the same time, I'm not expecting it to be great. It is a 1995 Honda Civic, so I expect I'm gonna have 1995 AC quality. So let me describe the problem to you guys. So basically the tech managed to get Freon installed into the whole system. The leak down test passed and it did hold vacuum, but he did manage to tell me that the compressor was not engaging and that when he had to bypass it, the wire was getting too hot to hold during the process. Now, when I picked up the car, I figured I could give it a little once over to see if it was a simple fix. It was not. So I had to go through some online forums to figure out exactly how to troubleshoot this problem. And I'll show you guys basically what I did. Now, I do want to mention that I'm not an expert. So if it looks like I'm doing something stupid or wrong, it's because I don't know what I'm doing. So it's going to be the second one from the left. Where's it at? There's no fuse right next to that one, but I've got a 15 amp fuse in there. Why is that there? Ugh. Anyway, once I checked that this fuse was good, I moved on to the next one. Now, this next one is located next to the battery here, and it is this 20 amp fuse right there in that location, and it is responsible for the condenser fan. Once I managed to install the entire AC system in here, I basically just took it to get charged right away, and I didn't even check if these fuses were installed, which is why when I picked up the Honda, I figured it'd be a simple fix and I could just replace these and no harm, no foul, right? So when I bring it in here, I realized there is no fuse in this condenser fan. And I figured, oh, perfect, just pop right in and I'm done. So that's basically what I did. I popped one in there, turned the car on, turned the AC on, and nothing happened. Now, in my excitedness, again, I didn't even check if the fuse that I used, which was already in the fuse box, right? I just took it from the spare spot and put it in there. I didn't even check if that one was blown before I put it in there. So I couldn't be sure whether or not I blew it or if it was already blown. So I added another one and tested it again. And this time I confirmed that it actually did blow. So this basically confirmed it's not a simple fuse, for me anyway. So I had to move on to the next step in the troubleshooting. From there to the sub harness located right here in the radiator support. Now, in a previous video, I actually painted the engine bay here, and I did it pretty lazily, to be honest, that I didn't even check if the grounds had enough contact with the chassis because of the paint. So I figured that could also have been an issue. So the ground for the sub harness is located right here. And what I did is I basically just took it out, sanded the area, and put it back in there just to make sure I had full contact with the chassis and the paint wasn't getting in the way. So I threw another fuse in there, turned it on, clicked the AC button, and fuse blew instantly. So nothing changed. So the next step I did is I had to check the sub harness to make sure that that it wasn't grounding out on the chassis anywhere else. And what I did is I just inspected it visually to see if there were any breaks in it. And at the same time, once I finished doing all that, I also used a multimeter to confirm that I had continuity between this end and that end over there by the relays. And basically the way I did that is by using this multimeter, and I just sent it to continuity, which is this Wi-Fi signal looking thing. And it basically just checks that there is a closed circuit. Boom, right? So what I did is I took the pin from this end and I touched the pin on that end. And if it beeped, it means the wire was closed. Now, unfortunately, this didn't really confirm if there was a ground on it, right? Because technically it could beep, but if you have like a break in the wiring, it could also short out. However, now basically after I finished checking with the multimeter, I confirmed that I had continuity from this end to that end, and visual inspection just made me a little bit more confident that I didn't have any actual breaks in any of these wires. So I was pretty sure I wasn't grounding on anything because I also taped up the wires and I also added them into the wiring harness and I taped that up. So pretty sure I'm not shorting out on the sub harness. Now you could also check the harness from that area into the dashboard, but I'm pretty lazy and I didn't even, mess with that area over there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just assume that that area was clean. However, you can check it on your own. Now, once I checked the fuses and I checked the sub harness, the next thing to check, which is basically just following the power flow, is these relays here. I knew that the compressor was not engaging. I didn't know whether or not the condenser fan was, right? Because the tech didn't mention that. The second I tried to test anything here, the fuse blew instantly. So I had to go through the entire troubleshooting diagram to figure out exactly where my problem was. And these relays here are basically identical, and they feed the power to the condenser and the compressor accordingly. It's basically just this one bolt, and then the relays just come right out. Now, in order to unplug these relays, what you want to do is you want to push down in this area here, and then just wiggle it right out. Boom. And from what I read online, they sometimes go out. The relays are identical, but the blue wire goes to the condenser here, and the red wire goes to the compressor back there. Yeah, this is definitely not as easy as it looks, but it is doable. So in order to check these relays, what I did is I just stuck these wires in there into pins, I think it's pins 2 and 4, I think, if I remember correctly, it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, but I'm not entirely sure. But I wired up these two over here on the right side, and basically I want to hear a click. That's all I'm looking for. Hopefully I don't break this stuff, but check it out. And that's how I know that the little switch inside is actually turning on. Now these relays are from a different car that I picked up because I assumed that they might be broken, and they really aren't that expensive. Now we can also check using this multimeter here, right? Just check it for continuity again. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna test the other side. So that's nothing there. I'm gonna touch the 2 probes right now, right there. These are the 2 pins, nothing. So with the relays basically plugged into the wiring, hopefully I don't fucking blow myself up here. And the circuit should be closed now. Now, if you don't have access to a battery or some cables and you don't know how to check your relays, right? What I did is I didn't actually want to go through that process either because the wiring got a little annoying. The wires are not exactly safe, but basically what I did is, assuming that both of these relays are not broken, what I did is I just switched them, right? And see if the fuse still blew. So I essentially took the condenser relay and installed it into the compressor side of the harness. Then what I did is I unplugged either the compressor or the condenser and tested to see if the relay still worked and if the fuse still blew. And it was at this point that I basically figured out where my issue was hiding, right? So what I did is when I switched the condenser relay over to the compressor side and I unplugged the condenser, I basically eliminated the need for this relay. And then this relay turned on and the fuse blew. So what I did then is I went ahead and I unplugged the compressor and plugged in the condenser here. With the relay still switched, I turned it on again, obviously replaced the fuse, turned the AC on, and the fuse did not blow, and the condenser fan turned on. And then I just repeated this process to check the other relay. Basically, both of the fuses blew when I turned on the compressor, but the condenser fan turned on regardless of which relay was being used. So that made me believe that my relays were still good. Fan is spinning. The fan is definitely spinning. Which means at this point, I've pretty much confirmed that the short is happening somewhere in there. And that's a real bummer because I have charged the system, and any repair to that stupid thing is going to charge me a lot of money to evacuate and then recharge the system again because I can't reach it or get to it without removing the hoses. I gotta admit, I really fucked up. I should have checked that. I should have checked. What a bummer. Get a Honda, they said. Get some AC. Why don't you? Look at all these fuses. Broken, blown, and broken. If you find that your issue is either both of these, which is bad luck, shit out of luck, you got 2 issues you got to solve. But if it's the condenser side and not the compressor, what I read is the fan could also be pulling too much power. And I basically was kind of afraid of this issue because when I installed this condenser fan, the wiring was cut. I realized I got more problems. What the? I don't know who would want to splice into a fan, but It's fixed now. And you know, since my fuse blew the instant I hit the AC button, I figured there could be a grounding issue right there. However, that wasn't the case because my condenser fan turned on and the fuse only blew when the compressor tried to engage. Now, I also want to mention that if you find that your issue is on the condenser side, there's also another switch here, which is a pressure switch. And I didn't even replace. It's located right here, right behind this actual hose line, and it goes into this clip. This is the high-low pressure switch. From what I understand about that switch right there, it's closed at all times and only opens in order to protect the compressor from being damaged if the pressure is either too low or too high. And because I had my AC recharged and all the Freon added, the vacuum was good and my pressure was good, and the problem occurred the second I pushed the AC button. This switch basically never came into the equation. So I don't think that was the issue. Now, there are also some other things that could have been wrong, and they're on this side. So the issue could also be in here, right? It could be inside the climate control unit here. And basically what could happen is the second you push this button, you could also get a short, right? And that could be due to some bad wiring in there. Maybe one of the resistors went out. Maybe this button is like corroded or something. I don't know. It's worth checking if you haven't. However, I basically went through this entire area and checked all the wiring as well, just to make sure I didn't miss anything, and mine was good. Another thing could be your heater fan, right? And it's basically just in charge of pushing all the air, whether it's from the heater or the AC condenser in here. And since my heater worked, I didn't think that was an issue because, you know, obviously if the heater worked, the fan was working. However, I did also take the fan out and I cleaned it up just to actually help things along a little bit smoother, just because they are, you know, pretty common thing to get like dirty and stuff. So I kind of wanted to clean that up just to make sure the fan was spinning high enough and my AC was actually getting to me once I fixed this issue. So to recap, fuses, good. Wiring, good. Relays, good. Condenser fan, also good. Compressor, I don't know, it wasn't really checking out. Let me show you guys exactly what I did with the compressor, right? So this is the one I picked up at the junkyard. I bought it because it looked, well, actually I bought it because it was one of the only ones that was still in a 95 Honda Civic. I didn't actually check anything other than spinning this and listening for any damaged stuff that could be inside of the compressor. And what I didn't account for is that mine was broken. Well, we gotta go back to the junkyard and get another one, because I sure as shit ain't gonna pay all this money and just scrap it because the compressor's broken. We're gonna go fucking ham, and I'm getting another one because I'm getting my AC. So like I mentioned, I just picked up this compressor at the junkyard. Didn't really know too much about it, but I just spun it around to see if it sounded broken, whatever that would sound like. But what I should have done is tested the fuel coil, because I've disconnected it actually here, and these are the connectors. So we're gonna check the resistance, and I think the range is somewhere around 2.8. And that is definitely low. It's like 2.8 plus or minus 0.15, I think, if I remember correctly. And it makes sense. It was drawing too much power because the resistance was so low. The tech actually mentioned that when they went to bypass this, they had to run power directly to this clip here. And they mentioned that the wire was getting so hot, it was kind of hard to actually hold. So that is something I should have checked before actually buying this compressor. Another thing to check is this clutch here, to make sure it doesn't have too much play. As you guys can see here, you see that? Apparently that's too much play. That's too wobbly. And the other one that I bought to replace this compressor did not have this much play. Now, if you have some of these gauges to actually read the proper distance between the clutch and the pulley, you know, you could obviously use these. It's supposed to be somewhere around 35 millimeters to 65. And obviously 35 definitely fits. 65 also fits. But if I go more than that to, let's say, 70, that also fits. So another way to check is if you have these, but just for the most part, just look at that play. Now, for reference, I'm gonna be checking another compressor that I actually did check before pulling, and let's see what this looks like. So we got 3 ohms, definitely a lot better than that. Yeah, so even this big one is kind of hard to actually fit. So that's good. It does not have that much play. Or any at all, actually. Kind of stiff. This one moves, but this one doesn't. So that's good. The field coil inside here is basically just a giant magnet that engages the clutch. So, right, technically you could have both of these things go wrong, right? Your clutch could have too much play and the field coil could be bad, or one or the other. Either way, I knew that my resistance was off and my clutch was also off. So I had to buy a whole new one because the parts to replace this are way more expensive than to replace all of this. Also, I want to mention, I don't know if it was me that broke it. I don't remember it being this bad when I bought it. However, it could have been. But also when I was draining the fluid in here, I was spinning this both ways. I also don't know if that was an issue. And at the same time, I was also grabbing it from here, maybe a little bit too much. Maybe I damaged it inside by holding all the weight from this side, because it is pretty heavy. I'm not gonna lie. This is like 25 pounds, 30 pounds. And then imagine just holding this, trying to spin this. It's a very awkward thing to hold on to, but technically, I don't know if I was the one who broke it or if it was broken when I bought it. But once I figured out that the compressor was the issue, I was left with another expensive problem because I had replaced all the Freon in here, and now I had to remove it all out just to remove the compressor. Luckily, the shop that I went to was nice enough to do the extraction process for free, simply because I was gonna go back to them to add it again. Now, adding the oil was a little tricky because none of the forums or none of the manuals actually say how much oil is supposed to be in the system, and I couldn't figure it out. However, I did know that when I added all these parts back in here, I added 4 ounces. And the oil that I extracted from that compressor is basically the number I installed back into this compressor. Just about 35 milliliters. I'm gonna go ahead and add 40 to account for any spillage. But first, I'm gonna actually have to drain that one and clean it up a little of its oil. And I also added just a little bit extra because I don't know if I mentioned this in the other video, but the 2000 Honda Civic AC evaporator is 1/3 of an ounce bigger than the 95 Honda Civic evaporator. So I basically had a little bit more room to work with if I wanted to add more oil, but I basically tried to keep it around 4 ounces, or, you know, in this case, like 4.3 ounces. So that was basically the entire troubleshooting that I did to get this whole AC system figured out. And let me tell you guys, it does work now. And everything checks out. Let me show you guys. Well, I mean, it's not like you can see that I have AC, but full blast, fuse does not blow. And this is gonna come in handy for road trips, you know? Much, much better daily driver like this. Condenser is on, compressor is on. Traffic jams are no longer an issue. Yeah, this is nothing now. This is a little cold now. Fuck yeah, I finally got AC. There's a bit of an idle. I did record it later on when I was driving it, and the idle does come on and off intermittently. However, if I turn the AC off, it's not an issue, and it doesn't surge for me. It doesn't go that high off. It's like a little bit up, so it's not that big of an issue for me. I was very well prepared for this. I read online that you can actually just reset the ECU, right? The book, the manual that you can find online has a very easy process to go through. It's not that hard or that long. However, it does require a little bit of time because the idle has to be fixed and the radiator has to turn on. I think it says something about revving up to like 3,000 RPMs or something. It's not that difficult. Now, in classic Project GoodSpeed fashion, I fixed the AC, and I also gave rise to another problem. Because I didn't have AC, I always rolled with the windows down, and not an issue if I drove fast. Now that I have AC, the windows stay up, and I have discovered I have a little bit of an exhaust leak. So I might have fixed the car and got AC, but I might have also inadvertently exposed another problem, and that is I got a pretty bad exhaust leak. I can't breathe in this bitch. I'm gonna go ahead and see just how bad it is. That chiller comes in clutch. Yeah, I think this thing's bullshit because it has not gone off in 10 minutes. That's right by the freaking exhaust. I'm pretty sure I got an exhaust leak somewhere. But that's gonna be for another video because that's gonna cost a lot of money. Finding out where an exhaust leak is and then fixing it is probably gonna require welding, and I don't know how to do that. And I don't know where the issue is. Who cares? I'll figure it out later. But for now, AC is installed and it's good to go. But for now, that's gonna be it for this video, guys. So take care and Goodspeed.